There are some memories you wish you could forget, but they cling to you, like the ache of an old wound. Mine was a betrayal, one that sliced deeper than I'd thought possible. Lagos was a city where people came to chase dreams and fight for love. I thought I had won both. My husband, Connor, was my anchor, my best friend. And my sister, Titi, had always been my confidant. They were the two people I trusted most. Little did I know they would be the ones to shatter my world. Connor and I had been married for 7 years. We met at a friend's party in Ikeja. He was charming, with a way of making you feel like the only person in the room. I'd fallen for him instantly, his warmth, his sense of humor, and the promise of stability he offered. After a whirlwind romance, he proposed, and we began our lives together. We were happy, or so I thought. Titi, my younger sister, was 3 years younger than me, and we were inseparable growing up. Our mother passed away when we were young, and I had taken on a maternal role for her. She would often come over to our apartment, cook with me, watch movies, and sometimes even spend the night. She was like a part of our family. As the years went by, Connor and I began struggling to conceive. It became a dark cloud over our marriage, with hospital visits and countless tests. Titi was always there to comfort me, reassuring me that everything would work out in time. I clung to her words, finding solace in her presence. Little did I know that while she was comforting me, she was drawing closer to my husband in ways that were unimaginable. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find Connor and Titi talking in the kitchen. They quickly fell silent as I entered, and Connor looked away. Something felt off, but I brushed it aside, believing that I was just overthinking things. After all, this was my sister and my husband. I trusted them implicitly. But as weeks turned into months, I started noticing more strange behaviors. Titi would come over at odd hours, often when I wasn't around, claiming she'd wanted to drop something off. Connor became more distant, making excuses for not spending time together. I tried talking to him about it, but he dismissed my concerns, attributing his change in behavior to work stress. One weekend, Titi insisted on taking me out to a spa to relax. She booked a full-day package, saying she wanted to spend time with her favorite sister. While I tried to enjoy the day, a strange feeling gnawed at me. Something about her insistence seemed forced, almost desperate. I tried to push the thought aside, reasoning that I was just letting my worries get the better of me. When I returned home that evening, Connor wasn't there. I called him several times, but he didn't answer. The feeling of dread that had been growing for weeks finally reached its peak. I knew something was wrong. I stayed up all night, pacing the apartment, waiting for him to come home. The next morning, he walked in, his clothes disheveled, smelling faintly of perfume. I confronted him, my voice shaking as I asked him where he'd been. He avoided my gaze, muttering something about a late night at work, but I knew he was lying. My mind raced, connecting dots that I hadn't wanted to see before. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I decided to check his phone. It was something I'd never done before. But my instincts were screaming at me. As I scrolled through his messages, I came across a thread that made my blood run cold. There, in black and white, were messages between Connor and Titi, flirtatious texts, plans to meet, and even confessions of love. My hands shook as I read through their messages, each one feeling like a dagger to my heart. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The two people I trusted most had been betraying me in the worst way possible. I felt as if the ground beneath me had disappeared. I confronted them both that evening. Connor tried to explain, saying that it just happened and that he'd been feeling lonely because of the strain in our marriage. Titi sat silently, looking down, unable to meet my eyes. I demanded to know how long it had been going on. She whispered that it had started months ago, during one of the many nights she had come to keep me company. The betrayal was too much to bear. I left the house that night, needing to clear my head. I wandered through the streets of Lagos, my mind spinning with anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could they have done this to me? Was my love for them so insignificant that they would throw it all away in the days that followed? I grappled with my emotions. My family and friends were supportive, urging me to cut them out of my life completely. But my heart was torn. Despite the pain they'd caused me, a part of me still loved them both. Memories of happier times played over in my mind, making it hard to move forward. Connor begged for forgiveness, promising that he'd end things with Titi and that he'd do anything to make it up to me. Titi, too, came to me in tears, saying she was sorry and that she'd been foolish and selfish. I listened to their apologies, but my heart remained cold. Trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. I needed time to heal, to figure out what I wanted for myself. I spent weeks reflecting on my life, my marriage, and my relationships. I started seeing a therapist, trying to find a way to process my pain and anger without letting it consume me. Slowly, I began to rebuild my sense of self, realizing that I was stronger than I had ever known. Eventually, I made the decision to leave Connor. I filed for divorce and found a small apartment of my own. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt overwhelmed by the loneliness and the weight of my loss. But I knew that I deserved better than a life filled with lies and betrayal. As for Titi, our relationship was never the same. She tried reaching out to me, wanting to mend things, but I couldn't bring myself to let her back into my life. The bond we once shared had been shattered, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. Months turned into years, and slowly, I found peace. I threw myself into my career, traveling, meeting new people, and rediscovering the joy of life. I learned to trust again, but this time, I was more cautious, more protective of my heart. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal taught me a valuable lesson. It showed me the importance of self-love, of recognizing my worth and refusing to settle for less. I learned that even when life breaks you, you have the power to pick up the pieces and rebuild. The pain they caused me will always be a part of my story, but it no longer defines me. I am stronger, wiser, and ready to face the world with an open heart. And as I walk through the vibrant streets of Lagos, I am reminded that life goes on, that there is beauty in resilience, and that I am capable of creating my own happiness.